everybody, or nobody in so far. So let you guys pop in here for a minute while I just jam out and warm up before we get the thing started. This is going to be a comment response video, so I hope you enjoy. Everybody, can y'all hear me? If you could just throw a comment, let me know if you can hear me good and everything. That would be terrific. Hello, all four of you guys so far. I'll wait for a few more people to pop in before I get the meat of the video. Yo, John, what's up? Carl Taylor. Yes, you can hear me, bro? Okay, well, I'll jam for about 5 more minutes while people continue piling in, and then we will go ahead and get started with the video. So welcome, and we'll be very soon. So hello. Cut that bad boy off for a minute, you guys. So what's up, everybody? Hello, TheMorgile here, checking in for a new, wait a minute, can you please keep the mute a minute? Thank you. Hey, would you mind rolling me up a cigarette? You don't mind? Pretty please, or hand me the stuff. Thank you, dear. So I was reading through comments today. Hey guys, what's up, Bob? Hello. I was reading through comments today, and I just started, responding through the comment section, and it's just so much easier sort of thing verbally. So from time to time, I'll go through comments and respond in this sort of a live stream video. So it's always a lot of fun for me, and it's so much easier to respond verbally than it is to respond in typing out. And I think, you get to reach a wider group of people this way rather than typing an individual comment response to the original poster. So Well, here we go. And I'll tell you what, there's always just the typical vitriol, nonsensical insults, have absolutely nothing to do with the meat of the video that they're responding to. Just ad hominem attacks, insults, just potty stuff that has really no place in a scientific discussion. And yet, that tends to be the standard sort of default position of opponents, right? It's not as if they can actually beat in terms of debating the points or debating the actual subject matter. So they just resort to insults and vitriol. So it makes it difficult to try to motivate oneself to read through comments and respond to them, because I'd say you have to, go through a dozen just negative bits of before you actually get to something that's either a valid, legitimate question or maybe something interesting that we haven't thought of. But anyway, and I guess you guys probably can't see what I'm doing over here on my laptop, but I will also admit that the comments that are held for review by YouTube as inappropriate comments, usually those are some of the best ones that are actually like legitimate comments that have something to do with the topic at hand. Those would be held for review by YouTube's automated system, and yet the ones that are like insulting my wife just get, squeak on through with flying colors, right? So starting off here with David Rodriguez, he says, "Wide is the gate." I wish there was a way that I could screen share this with, but I'll just trust me, they're there.
You're insulting me.
Oh yeah, don't worry about it. It's just one example. But right, so yeah, the Earth is a globe because insert insult Giles' wife, right? I mean, that's the sort of proofs that they're resorting to anymore. Is just absolute nonsense, man. Pretty low, right? So, hey, baby, would you mind muting that altogether, please? Pretty please with your phone. David Rodriguez, another comment, "Wide is the gate, broad is the way," and many therapy that go in there but straight. I'm sorry, I'm not really making too much sense of that. I'm going to skip that one, you guys. I apologize. Page 111 says, and this is in response to the Flat Earth Checklist video I put out the other he says you have to go to David Weiss's Flat Earth app, and then you can get the Flat Earth videos that were hidden. And I guess this is sort of in response to the sentiment that, remember nostalgically back in the day when YouTube used to function as it was intended, where you could search for a topic and find really, good information, decent videos about that topic, and even peripherally real topic quite easily. And I would argue that that's what made YouTube so popular. Another thing I gotta say is that YouTube, if you remember 10 or more years ago, anytime you went to stream videos from other sites, you'd get nothing but buffering. Doesn't matter what your computer was, doesn't matter how good your internet connection was, you would find YouTube just hands down had the best infrastructure, back when such a thing was almost unheard of. So YouTube really, going for them when they first started out. That's why one of the reasons they became so popular is because, well, you could post content about what the hell you wanted, right? And you could easily find content about whatever the hell you wanted. Doesn't matter how off the wall or how practical it was. I mean, we're talking everything from, I don't know, the government is comprised of little green men, shapeshifters that drink our blood, to how to replace the windshield in your car, right? And everything in between. And there was no sort of censorship involved. I think we're all adults here, and especially now that YouTube has even put in filters and sort of guarantees that we have an adult audience, right? And so I post up videos, I have to sort of designate whether that video is geared towards children or whether it's geared towards an adult audience. And, I got to be honest, I don't think that any of my videos are geared towards children, talking Teletubby stuff, right? But at the same time, Santa Claus is geared towards children, the Easter Bunny is geared towards children, and of course, let's not forget the spinning ball Earth is geared. So, if the federally mandated school curriculum has carte blanche to target children with the globe Earth, I don't see why we can't have a similar sort of right to have children watch flat Earth videos. But you know, at the same time, I wouldn't say my videos are geared towards children per se. And so, you know, if I sneak in a cuss word here and there, it's not like to, you know, pervert any children's virtues. But at the same time, you know, sometimes that's just how I talk, and I will let one slip. So I apologize preemptively if that. Anyway, got off on a tangent, as you know I typically do. But yeah, Device's Flat Earth Sun Moon Clock app is definitely a good app. I've used it before, and that's right, he does have links to some really good flat in there. So that is a good way to find Flat Earth content. But you know, I don't think they're necessary, right? I mean, YouTube wasn't broke before, and they spent just millions of dollars and years fixing it, point to where it doesn't function as good as it did before, right? I mean, you guys remember algorithm changes, the user interface changes, then let's not forget all the purges to where YouTube is worse than it was before, in my opinion. Just do a YouTube's Flat Earth and you'll find nothing but trolls. You'll find nothing but misinformation. And I wouldn't say that's by accident, certainly by design, because let's face it, folks, Flat Earth, key to unlocking a sort of spirit of discernment that has never been seen before in modern history, right? Only did for me personally. Oh, of course, my phone's gonna give me a battery. So let me get a plug-in real quick, guys. Hang on a second. Oh, I'll tell you later. It's nothing important. I need a long unit. No, it's nothing like that. Just don't worry about it. It's irrelevant. They're just trolls. It's the point. Just don't worry about it. Really, it's nothing. I shouldn't even have mentioned it, but don't worry. I got them back, so it's all good. Okay, guys, I got to plug in here, so just bear with me. There we go. Okay, now we are cooking with Crisco. Maybe I can get a little bit better centered. There. Okay, so it looks like we are charging, right? Yeah, so I mean, it took YouTube millions of dollars and years to fix something that wasn't broke to begin with, and now, you know, we have a platform where we have to really watch what we say, and they can even go back and like retroactively hit us with community guidelines strike. It's a mess, man. It really is. So anyway, yeah, David Weiss's Earth app, definitely check that out. I think it's a couple bucks, $2.99 or something like that. So check that out. I would say the name of it, but it escapes me. The Flat Earth, Sun and Moon, something map, right? Somebody put it in the chat. I know you know it. Okay, so Mr. Labman says in response to the Flat Earth Checklist recent video, nice recap, thanks bro. He says that so many people are still not awake regarding the Flat Earth versus Ball Earth. Same goes for the 10 virgins, only now they are all sleeping. The 5 wise virgins had extra oil with them, I guess for like burning in the oil lamps. So keep your wedding dress on and keep filling your bottles with extra oil because you will fall asleep. And you will fall asleep just like that. So yeah, indeed, good comment, man, indeed. Dylan Dooley at Twitter says, sun doggies and moon halos prove God's firmament. Say that they are definitely evidence in favor of the firmament. It's a potential explanations for sun dogs and moon halos for sure. I just use the term proof very carefully, okay? Yeah, exactly. Carl Taylor agreed, and you know, I'm not trying to nitpick here, and I agree with the sentiment of Dylan Dooley at Twitter, but just be careful when you use the word proof, because supporting evidence or circumstantial evidence or you know, a plethora of evidence doesn't necessarily prove a thing. Although, you know, I agree, it gets to the certain point where everything stacks up to a flat and motionless Earth. I mean, what else could it be, right? So anyway, Dumb God says, Earth isn't flat. Learn something. Wow. So just in one fell half a dozen syllables or whatever, and that's it. I mean, that's the sort of replies we get from Ball Earth. It's either that or novel sense, right? But Earth isn't flat. Learn something. And this was in response to a video I did, section 1 in response to Professor Dave, which, actually I never finished section, so thanks for reminding me. I do need to bust that out of the archives and maybe finish that up, because, man, Professor Dave is one of those guys that, yeah, just love the guy, let me tell you. All right. This guy, Dumb God, says, I'm going to get so much hate from you shots. Okay, no, not hate. But so you make a blanket statement, Earth isn't flat, learn something. You call us dips the French, and you're going to get hate from us. Okay, Dumb God also, what do you mean not allowed people have been to space? Why would anyone lie? Tell me something it's proven that the Earth, you dip. If there is a God, and by the way, there's not a single period or comma or piece of punctuation in this whole thing, so it's kind of hard to separate the ideas. Proven that the Earth is round, you dop shots. If there is a God in this world, as long people act like this, will go to Mars or any place else. Okay, so wait, so dude is saying that it's flat earthers' fault that we haven't gone to Mars? Not, well, first of all, NASA's fault for faking mirrors. The fact of the matter is, Mars is just a light in the sky of us. It's not a terra firma spheroid in space. It's not a potential destination. That's the fact. But you do remember when they sent their mission to Mars and they gave us like the Mars rover that was aired on like the Discovery Channel or one of those. And 100% globe Earth believer back then when that thing came out. I guess it would have been the early 2000s. And man, I was so stoked about that. Super excited. I watched that hour, or maybe it was a 2-hour long documentary about the Mars rover. And about halfway through it, maybe closer towards the end, I got to realizing that it was all CGI. It was 100% computer graphics imaging. I couldn't understand why they did that, right? And I think I DVR'd it or recorded it, and I went through the whole thing and really kind of studied it carefully. And indeed, there wasn't a single frame of that was even claimed to be real footage. NASA admitted that it was CGI. So it doesn't make any sense to me that you would spend all that money sending up a rover to get soil samples and attach cameras to the thing, create a multi-million dollar document aired on the Discovery Channel or whatever, only to use CGI. It didn't make any sense to me at all. It left me scratching my head at the time, but of course never in a million years would I have suspected that, well, they faked, you can't actually go to Mars. The whole thing was a fake. Carl Taylor says in the chat, Ruby, your comment is one of ignorance. Okay, no name calling. Containment Counselor says, millionaires can afford to build a rocket to go to space. Here. Millionaires can afford a rocket to go to space. I guess you're too cowardly. Okay. Wow, you guys, please stop with the name. I mean, let's have some constructive comments in there, but just back and forth vitriol it just gets us nowhere, man. Whatever. I'm going to just stop looking at the chat here because it makes one's blood boil. Sorry, I'm trying to get my doggone phone to sit upright so I'm just framed at least somewhat. There we go. That's what I needed. All right. So, Dumb God, your comments make absolutely no sense whatsoever, buddy. I'm sorry to say. Maybe take a lesson in punctuation because, you can separate your thoughts and ideas with periods and commas. It makes it a little bit easier to understand and follow exactly what it is you're trying to say. Kevin Bell says, U.S. citizens have access to guns, etc. Just a thought. That was in response to American Recre's, a video I did quite a while back. Yeah, U.S. citizens have access to guns, etc. And yet, in many states, it's illegal for us to grow pot. Now, think about that. It's legal to, which are weapons, especially handguns, weapons that are designed to kill other people, hurt other people, defend yourself, sure. I'm certainly all for the right to bear arms. But on the other side of that token, I know of people that spent dozens of years for having pounds, possessing pounds of pot, okay, which is a plant God put on this earth for us as a medicine, okay? So anybody that believes that America is any sort of a free country, just think about that, okay? There's still states to this day that have your freedom stripped from you, all of your property seized, essentially your life as you know it taken away from you for growing a plant that the government has deemed illegal. But you can own a gun, right? Sure, you can own a gun. Makes no sense to me. The state of this country and really the state of this world is so upside down. It's amazing. But anyway, off on that tangent. First sentence says, great job on this video, John. Anybody that honestly and open-mindedly looks into the stationary earth has the scales from their eyes fall away and they see the deceptions. It's hard to understand how everyone doesn't see it. Agreed, man. I can only hazard a guess, and I know indoctrination plays a big part, but I think it's actually cowardice that keeps most inside the they're too afraid to honestly question the globe. And, you know, I tend to agree with that sentiment, man. I really do. And maybe not cowardice, but it is uncomfortable to consider the notion that all of science throughout history, all of theoretical physics, all of the famous astronomers and the great thinkers of yesteryear, so utterly wrong about our place in the universe. But, you know, just thinking back on my personal journey through, you know, from a globe earther becoming a flat earther, I remember it is a very difficult thing to try and accept, right? Because even though, and by the way, that comment was in response to Gravity and LIGO Debunked, which is a video I put out a week or two ago. It's a difficult thing to accept. Even if you have all the facts in front of you and you understand full well that, you know, obviously stationary, the curvature that is necessary for it to be a globe doesn't exist. It is still something it's hard to accept, and I agree, because they got us very young with this, man. When you start developing patterns of understanding at such a young age, those become sort of a part of you as you grow into adulthood, almost or subliminally. And so really, when you come to terms with flat earth, accept it as the obvious truth, it's almost like it changes you within. It changes that person within you. I mean, in many positive ways, of course, but it is a painful process. You know, well, first of all, like you consider the earth to be flat and it makes a lot of sense to you, but ball earth is so well ingrained into your subconscious. It's like, man, this just can't be true. It is such a hard thing to let go of. Now, of course, that sort of dies down, but to be very honest with you, like the associations that I have in my own mind, when I think of the word world, like just clear your mind and think of the word world, I see a blue ball in space, still to this day. And that's because of the associations that were formed when I was very young. That sort of thing sticks with you. And so there is a lot of deprogramming involved. And that's a difficult thing to come to terms with. So cowardice, yeah, that may be one way to put it. Although I would say maybe a better way to put it is just, well, maybe laziness. But yeah, cowardice, that sort of does it, man. Although
really
there are some negative connotations to that.
We focus on a picture that we've never really seen for flat earth.
Yeah. Okay, so Chisholm C says, I just want to know if you're saying the world is flat. Oh, now wait a minute. There were 18 replies, so I'm looking at this. Okay, so Chisholm C responds to Oliver Sutton's comment I just read. I just want to know if you're saying the world is flat, if you think so, there is so much proof that says otherwise. If you disagree, here are 5 pieces of proof that say otherwise. Okay, so 1, how does lunar eclipses work when the Earth is briefly in between the sun and the moon? Okay, so Chisholm C says here that the first proof, well, he asks a question about lunar eclipses, and this is what I'm saying about, let's be about what we call proof, because asking a question about lunar eclipses doesn't prove anything. Okay, Chisholm C, your first proof, again, how does this work when the Earth is briefly in between the sun and the moon, of course, the moon? Well, see, here's the thing. Only in the standard heliocentric model do we have an alignment of the Earth, moon, and space. In reality, on flat Earth, the Earth is the plane and the sun and moon are above us. Okay, so when we have a lunar eclipse, there's something else going on. The Earth is not obstructing the light from the sun hitting the Earth, hitting the moon rather. That's not happening. There's something else going on. Okay. But for you to completely fail to understand the flat Earth is, and sort of insert your belief system into this and then debunk your own misunderstanding, that's not how science or any venture towards the truth is done. Okay? Lunar eclipses are definitely something that we need to study from a flat Earth perspective. But just quickly, let's debunk the whole notion that lunar eclipses are caused by the Earth obscuring the light from the sun. Okay? But draw it out for yourself because you are a human being with a brain. Lunar eclipses should only occur on the ecliptic plane at midnight. Okay? So 12 hours opposite of high. Okay? That's the only condition to where lunar eclipses should occur. Find data where lunar eclipses occur at all hours of the night. You'll even have selenelions where the sun and the moon are visible overhead. The totality of a lunar eclipse, which is not possible according to the geometry of the ball Earth. But, I wish I had 3 balls. But, so like if you've got the sun, the moon, and the Earth in a line, ecliptic plane, the lunar eclipses can only happen when the Earth, according to your model, can only happen when the Earth obstructs the sun. Okay, it means that lunar eclipses should only happen at dead on balls midnight. The fact that they occur at other times debunks your notion that the geometry that you're saying is going on. It's totally dead in the water. Also, lunar eclipses should only occur between the tropics, depending on the time of the year. So again, we're talking about the plane. If it's the northern summer, then lunar eclipses could only happen at the Tropic of Cancer or thereabouts. If it's the southern summer, then lunar eclipses could only happen at the Tropic of Capricorn at midnight. And if we're talking eclipses, then lunar eclipses could only happen right smack dead on balls at the equator at night. And the fact of the matter is, there's plenty of instances where lunar eclipses happen outside of those boundaries, debunking the notion that a heliocentric system. The ball Earth model had lunar eclipses are just, there's just tons of them. Solar eclipses too. And I'll just give you an example. And by the way, solar eclipses should only happen exactly at high noon and should only happen again on the latitude season. Okay, so northern summer would be the Tropic of Cancer, southern summer Capricorn, equinox equator. Okay, because you can only have one alignment on that ecliptic plane. And you'll see the signature of total solar eclipses going near the polar regions, which is frankly just impossible on the ball Earth, just strictly at noon. Another big problem is you have the show of the moon. Now, again, they say that the moon is, 1,000-mile radius or 1,000-mile diameter, a relatively large object comparatively. But oftentimes we'll see the shadow of the moon as a prick, usually about 50 or 100 miles in diameter, sometimes as little as 2 or 3 miles in diameter, okay? And that's on. Now, if you can create a situation and duplicate it in a lab where you have a basketball-sized object obstructing a single distant light, creating a pinprick shadow of the basketball, say the size of a pinhead, then I'll concede this point. But the fact of the matter is, nowhere in reality can you create a situation where a single light source casts a single obstruction, spherical object with a single light source, casting a shadow that is orders of magnitude smaller than the diameter of that object obstructing the light source. That's simply not how light and shadows work. And yet we're expected to believe in the ball Earth theory. We have this bizarre umbra-penumbra effect where the light from the sun is inverted and creates this condition conducive to casting pinprick shadows on the Earth. It's absurd. So solar and lunar eclipses absolutely do not work on the ball Earth. They work very nicely on the flat Earth in many ways. And I'll tell you this, they work much better on flat Earth than they do on ball Earth. And anybody to actually study this and look into this will find that this is true. Now, of course, we don't have all the answers on flat Earth. There's a lot of work to be done. But you got to remember, we're dealing with a situation that this is all brand new. I mean, historically speaking, have people been looking into flat Earth? And we're getting better and better information every day, better and better fleshing out of the model every single day. But one thing's for sure is that the ball Earth just fails miserably all across the board, especially when it comes to eclipses. So the fact that your first proof is a question about lunar eclipses just goes to show that you haven't looked into this, because the flat Earth deals with lunar eclipses much better than the Earth or ball Earth or whatever. Now, I would venture to guess that if we were to take NASA's budget and spend that money on science of flat Earth, real science, and studying what's going on with the sun and the moon during eclipses, we would have 100% cogent answers to this. But as it stands right now, we're still trying to stop the likes of NASA from spending billions of dollars a year faking space and tricking people into believing that we live on a spinning ball. Okay? So anyway, Chisholm, and again, this is still in response to Oliver's comment where he was just offering some, encouragement on the video. Second proof that Chisholm C has against the flat Earth. He says, 2, the flat Earth has no map scale. Scales are things on maps that show, for example, 10 centimeters on the map is something like 900 kilometers. IRL. Get me, and since the flat Earth map is literally impossible to scale, how is the Earth flat? Okay, so I suppose he's talking about the equidistant map, and the problem with that is you're not looking right. The azimuthal equidistant map only measures distances accurately if you're starting from the center and measuring your way out from the center, okay? So like the lines of longitude that are, say, south of the equator, those big wide lines of longitude south of the equator are not to scale. So if you were to put some type of scale on the azimuthal equidistant map, it would be wrong, because you have to understand what exactly is an azimuthal equidistant map and then properly. So the best way I can describe this so that it might click for you, where I just confused you more, is take, for example, the Mercator projection, right? And on the Mercator projection, you've got 90 degrees north and south as horizontal lines across the top and bottom of the map. And these two lines are equal in terms of length as the equator, okay? Now we know that the equator is 1,000 miles around, and yet the north and south pole points are 0. I mean, they're a point on the bottom of allegedly and the top of a sphere allegedly. So let's just deal with the north, okay? The central is just a point. However, on the Mercator projection, it's represented as it's equal in length to the equator. So it's not 25,000 mile line, and yet it is represented as such. It is in fact a point that is stretched to infinity, okay? That's the Mercator projection. That's what people accept. Globe Earthers, flat Earth, the Mercator projection. That's a map that we use. And yet, there's a problem with scale right there, right? So if you were to say, take an inch of the equator, say that represents 1,000 miles on this map, that same inch represents a point stretched to infinity. So the same sort of thing applies to the azimuthal equidistant projection, where the further you get from the center, the more and more stretched the distances are, really to the point of infinity at the far south pole, where again you have what is alleged to be a single point stretched around the outside to infinity. Okay, I think what we probably actually have is something that Cami Nodal and Bob have displayed in multiple occasions, where it's something very similar to the azimuthal equidistant projection when you're talking about an equator. And when you start looking into magnetic declinations, have sort of been twisted around and misrepresented. Once we get all this data together and maybe do some actual surveying of the far south, and again, we're going to need NASA's budget, so NASA might as well just full-busters the $25 billion a year. We'll handle it, I promise you, if we've got that kind of budget. We'll have these sorts of answers. But the fact that there's no scale on the equidistant projection just proves that you don't know what you're talking about, and you don't really know what the azimuthal equidistant projection is all about. Okay? So when you approach the topic of flat Earth from a position of ignorance, and then apply your ignorance to this discussion or to this debate, it gets us nowhere, okay? It really just the waters of the discussion, And it really, it's up to each individual to research this stuff on their own. Sure, it's fine to ask questions. I'll be right about this from the get-go. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to go down, the garden paths to nowhere sometimes. But we have to make this endeavor, and we have to understand that we're not going to be right 100% of the time. We have to make these mistakes in order to get ourselves closer to the truth. But I mean, we've made a huge amount of progress over the last, 6-7 years, at least as far as I'm concerned, a huge amount of progress in terms of our understanding of what's going on in reality. What we do know for sure is that it's not a spinning ball. The world doesn't spin, doesn't orbit. There's no curvature. And yes, we need to do a lot of work in terms of the maps. Now, one of the biggest problems and hurdles that we have in terms of getting the maps correct are things like the Antarctic Treaty. It's illegal to bring or store fuel beyond 60 degrees south. Have red herring sort of cover stories like the Challenge, where it's like a yacht race around the South Arctic Circle, allegedly, but they don't even approach really the 50 or 60 degrees. It would be illegal for them to do so. So it's a misnomer. I mean, look at the guy that won it a couple of years ago. He, in his own words, in the 40 and 50 degrees south latitude for the entirety of that thing. Okay, so even come near. Oh wow, excuse me, guys. Sorry. And come near the South Arctic Circle. Okay, so it's just it's a man, because if we were able to have free roaming capabilities and unlimited budget like NASA, and instead of fakes, we could actually go and explore the South Arctic and start doing maps of this and exactly where it is that we live. And I would bet my bottom dollar, honestly, in my heart of hearts, I can't prove it, but in my heart of hearts, I know that there's more land out there. I feel that there must be. Maybe there's more land that's right here within our realm, within our geothermal pocket. But even beyond that, there could be other worlds right here on the same physical plane, and we'd be none the wiser, okay? Because into believing that we live on a finite ball with no escape, okay? They did a brilliant job of it. They've got our pioneering spirits focused up in the sky. They've got us believing in fantasies that, we're potentially going to go to these little lights in the sky, when in reality, we should be pioneering in all directions in the center, south. And, this is not to say that I necessarily adhere to or agree with the sort of azimuthal equidistant projection, which is not a model, by the way. It is merely a projection, okay? But I think that enough accurate depiction of what's going on flat Earth. It shows how circumnavigation works on a plane as opposed to a sphere. It shows how day and night work. It shows how this work. And so the azimuthal equidistant projection is an extremely useful tool in explaining how globe Earth is not, let me rephrase this. It goes to show how certain elements of reality are not exclusive to globe. So we're taught as little young gullible toddlers that seasons are exclusive to globe Earth. We're taught that circumnavigation is exclusive to globe Earth. We're taught that day and night are exclusive to globe Earth. We're taught that the Coriolis effect are exclusive to globe Earth. When you get down to it and actually look into this, you'll find that none of that's true. There's a rational and cogent explanation for all of these, everything on a flat and stationary Earth as well. And in fact, the flat and motionless Earth works a million times better with all of these points of contention, with all of these ways to examine flat Earth kills it, man. It really does. And it is only that sort of knee-jerk reaction that was instilled into us when we were little kids. I mean, I remember school, there was a section in the book where you're literally taught to laugh at flat Earth people, right? Like how stupid they were for thinking the Earth, and how they thought they'd fall off the edge until they finally circumnavigated the world, and aha, well, now we know it's a globe, right? But of course, circumnavigation is exclusive to the ball. And so, I mean, that's how they did it across the board. They were extremely crafty. Honestly, I'm not sure where this all began. I mean, certainly you have this sort of Copernican revolution, the Copernican principle, which dictates mediocrity, that the Earth is nothing special, we're just a speck of dust flying around. And it is against their sort of philosophy, and even frightening for them to consider the notion that perhaps there is something special, central, and unique about our world, which to me, I think that's a beautiful thought. to know that there is something, excuse me, there's a fly in here, sorry, that there is something important about life, something important about the world that's special, that we are unique, that we're not just a speck of dust flying around an infinite cosmos aimlessly, that, you know, the origin's just not some inanimate soup that magically or randomly became DNA and evolved into us. No, what happened was this realm was created by an intelligent designer. His signature is everywhere. His signature is in DNA code. His signature is in the cycle of the stars and of the plane X. Infinite Plane Society, what's up, man? Thanks for the super chat. Shout out from the Illuminati Masonic Reptoids, bruh. All right. Thank you, man. I appreciate the super chat. But you know, it goes to show you how we were all indoctrinated as little kids about the globe Earth, and how certain points are exclusive to globe Earth, when in fact that's just anarchy. So moving on to the third thing that this guy named Chisholm sees, is that this is his third proof that the Earth is a ball. He says, the way flat earthers believe that the Earth goes in a circle motion to Antarctica, then when the sun is not specifically on that part of the Earth, then not only is it in total darkness, it is shocking cold. Places like Nigeria, frosty, cold at night, which is very, very untrue, as my family and I come from there. Okay, so now that makes a lot of sense. Cathartic Canuck, a super chat for 50 CA. Appreciate that. Crepuscular rays, impossible or ... Wow, thank you so much for chat. So I honestly, on that third point there, I have no idea what this guy just said. He says, and again, I'm going to try to make I'm going to read through it again. Not a single period in any of this, one comma. I'm not picking apart his grammar. I'm just trying to express the fact that it's very difficult to understand what this gentleman is trying to get across. He says, the way flat earthers believe Earth goes in a circle motion towards Antarctica, when the sun is not specifically on that part of the Earth, not only is it in total darkness, it will be shocking cold, making Nigeria frosty, cold at night, which is very untrue. Okay, so I sort of... now here's the thing, we don't live in a vacuum, we live in an atmosphere, and that atmosphere behaves as an insulator and as a liquid on the macro level. And so when the sun is making circuits overhead on a daily basis, so it takes 24 hours for the sun to make one circuit overhead, it slowly sort of widens its arc as it approaches the southern, and or its radius rather, and then it decreases this as it approaches the northern summer. And the thing is when the sun's, say, over China, you know, it's dark over here in the United States, but it's cold because we live in an insulated sort of liquid environment. It's not like the sun is millions of miles away, as believe. If you use basic triangulation using the Pythagorean theorem and Euclid's rules or whatever, the sun appears to be just around 3,500 miles in altitude and about 35 miles diameter, give or take. I mean, these are just rough estimates. But the sun is a bit of a mystery because, you see, we view the sun, we're viewing a subjective instance of the sun. Okay? A lot of people think that light just only ever travels in straight lines right from the sun to your eye, but that isn't the case. You have refraction, you have magnetic sort of refringence, a lot of perturbing factors that between the sun and our eye. So you have the source sun, which may be here, and once it goes through this refraction process down to your eye, the apparent sun may appear over here. So in order to triangulate on that, it becomes difficult because the atmosphere behaves as a liquid. But the thing is, the sun is not millions of miles away. It is local. During northern summer, it warms the central atmosphere more so than it does the outside atmosphere, that is southern atmosphere. And so it all makes perfect sense. But to say that because it doesn't get bone-chilling cold in Nigeria when the sun isn't overhead proves the Earth's a globe, that doesn't make any sense. You just haven't thought this through. It actually makes perfect sense on the flat Earth. This makes perfect sense on flat Earth. Day and night make perfect sense. And, your argument might hold water if we lived in a vacuum with no atmosphere. No, we clearly have an atmosphere. There is an insulating factor. And the sun definitely lights and heats the earth. The moon definitely, believe it or not, the moon is a cooling light, and that's been documented as far as I can tell as a fact. There is a cooling element to the moon. And so, we do have cogent explanations for all of this, and this just goes to show that you really haven't looked into it much, my friend. Well, you will. Okay, so number 4, and again, this is 4 out of 5 things that C is doing in reply to Oliver Sutton's comment. He says, now 4. Now, flat earthers say that what we see in the horizon like that because of refraction and perspective. You never go into detail how it works. And it's also funny how you talk about refraction, even though it only for objects in the water, like refraction, a pencil looks bent in the water, but boats are made on top of the water, and it is, unless you say boats don't, and it's UFOs that hold up the boat, and the Rock Johnson and from Undertale used the Harry Potter powers to keep the people drowning. Good golly, man. There was not even a single period in all that. So I think the point that you're missing, dude, is that we're not saying that the boats are underwater, okay? What we're saying is that recurs in the atmosphere, okay? Anytime there's a temperature change in the atmosphere or a density gradient in the atmosphere, or even traveling through the vaporous atmosphere, you get refraction. Light does not travel in straight lines, unless perhaps you're dealing with light in a vacuum. Then yes, it may run a perfectly rectilinear path. But when you're dealing with light traveling through the fluid, which the atmosphere is a fluid, then you're going to get refraction. We do indeed get refraction. And this is proven. I mean, we don't even have to do this. When you're dealing with air, ask any air traffic controller. When you see an airplane flying at really high altitudes, there is an apparent of the plane and an actual position of the plane, and the discrepancy is caused to refraction. Now, certainly the plane isn't underwater, right? The plane's up, and this is because the atmosphere behaves as a liquid on the macroscopic level. And so, my friend, when we're talking about refraction of boats on the horizon, we're not saying the boats are underwater. We're saying that the refraction is occurring in the atmosphere. So you're just way off base here. Hopefully, maybe you can for a better grasp on what it is exactly that the flat earth proponents, before you go making an absolute fool of yourself, debunking stuff that we never even argued, okay? I mean, sure, you can go and beat the crap out of some straw man in your backyard all day long. Prove anything. You can slap yourself around the face with a red herring. It doesn't prove anything, okay? Okay, so finally 5. Talking about perspective and refraction horizons still happens on a person dry land, and even by kid brother can plainly say that refraction only happens on water, and on land you have the same perspective if the person is on the road, yet the horizon effect still happens. So unless you have the ability to use proof and detailed explanation to prove all my statement false, you can see the earth is flat. May God bless your family, and maybe he will help you see the truth. Wow, Ball Music Journey, thanks so much for the super chat, my friend. Wow, that was very kind of you. Awesome. And there's no sort of comment there, just a super chat. Thank you, man. God bless. I have no idea what this guy just said with number 5. He says, talking about perspective and refraction, horizons still happen on a person driving on land, and even kid brother can plainly say that refraction only happens on water, and you have the same perspective. Okay, so this guy's still arguing that refraction of water, which is wrong. He's saying that the horizon still happens on a person driving on land. Yes. So what the horizon is, we're talking about the vanishing point, okay? We're talking about an optical horizon, which is caused by, well, the way that our eyes work. Our eyes are convex, okay? And the further away objects get, the smaller and tighter towards our line of sight they become. And so what the horizon is essentially infinite vanishing points every 360 degrees. This is an optical phenomenon. It's not caused by Earth curvature. It's not by anything other than, well, the way that we view the world is through our convex lens eyes. And I would say that the horizon is caused by a combination of these sort of laws of perspective, and refraction all plays a role in it too. And what I mean by that is, let's say it's a clear day, or let's say it's a cloudy day, and you're looking off in the distant horizon, and you've got clouds overhead, directly overhead, you've got clouds, and off towards the horizon, clouds that are right next to the ground or right next to the water, right? We know that the clouds and the water aren't actually next to each other, like about to touch, right? I mean, obviously they're not, because if you were to travel to that position, you would see that the clouds are way ahead. So this sort of squishing down, squishing together effect of heat and cloud is caused by perspective, and I would say it is exacerbated by refraction, okay? We know that the clouds are not near the water. However, the light that is coming from the clouds is compelled downward due to refraction. Okay, that's what it appears to me, and we can argue all day long about exactly how refraction works or what is refraction, but the end result is this: clouds that we know are overhead appear near the ground by the horizon. So what the is of perspective and refraction is the effect is the apparent of these clouds. Okay. So, I mean, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, you don't understand refraction, you don't understand how it works, but the end result is the clouds appear low, actually are, okay? And so I would say that is due to perspective action causing an apparent lowering of those high altitude objects, okay? Very simple explanation. And, and I understand this guy here, Chisholm C. from Nigeria, so I'm assuming that English is not his first language, so I did give him a pass on his punctuation and stuff like that, but I mean, all across the board, he's just 100% wrong on every single one of his points. He has what he's talking about. He certainly has no idea what flat earth proponents are talking. And isn't that just typical? I mean, that's exactly what we've come to expect from ball earth proponents in so many cases. I mean, sure, you have your trolls out there, seem to know both sides of the arguments, and all they ever do is just argue at him for the sake of arguing against flat earthers because, well, I would say they're paid to do so. But somebody like this guy, not at all. He is just that the earth is a ball no matter what. Everybody knows it. We were taught it since we were little kids. And so anybody saying otherwise, like us stupid flat earthers, must be wrong. So any word salad that he spews all over the internet, I mean, he must be right. Because of course, everybody knows the earth's a spinning ball, right? And that's just so typical. That's what we get. All right, so enough with that. So he gave me 2 days to reply. Chisholm C made that post 9 ago. So wow, I was early, man. There you go, Chisholm C. Back at you. Oliver Sutton says 8 hours ago in response to that, he says, you have the very same questions we all had when we were first confronted with the proposition that the earth is not a globe. You're not unique. We all went through the kindergarten proposition that the earth is not a globe. Though through high school, and most got our bachelor's degrees believing what our teachers taught in society, I suggest you start by watching Eric Dubay's 200 Proofs the Earth is Flat. And yeah, very, very well said, Oliver Sutton. That's very true. So I think I would agree with you that that this guy Chisholm C is on his way to becoming a flat earther, even though he's approaching this the wrong way. Instead of actually doing his research and sort of arguing these points internally with himself and coming to a rational conclusion based on logic, he's just spewing his ignorance all over the internet, which isn't for him, but I've seen it happen before. Maybe he'll come around and apologize for being such a dunce. No offense, Chisholm. And Chisholm says, thank you for the kind reply, but I merely ask for you to read my whole comment properly and to every point I made. Unless you do that, you fit it hardly the flat earth fantasy. Really, so what? We're like, it's our responsibility to do your research for you and to answer. I mean, that really is a bad attitude to have. You're approaching this wrong, sir. At the end of the day, you should be your own personal guiding star towards the truth, right? The truth should definitely be, but don't rely on other people to answer all your questions for you. Pugsley Lovejoy, thanks for the super chat. He says, thank you for your unwavering commitment to sharing the truth. God bless you, man. Thanks for the super chat. Awesome. That's very kind of you. But yeah, just approach all the wrong way, man. I would suggest that you spend a lot more time first understanding what it is that the flat earth proponents are saying. And then if you have legitimate questions, that's fine. I mean, we all did. Uh, Great researchers, there's lots of resources that you can go to that will gladly answer your questions. But to approach this in the way where you're just people and giving ultimatums and saying, you better answer every one of my points or else you're wrong. I mean, nobody has time for that, man. I mean, that's argumentative. Scientific endeavor is not supposed to be argumentative like that. Sure, expand your horizons, ask questions, but I would just suggest do a bit more research first, man. You know what I mean? And these guys go back and forth quite a bit. And I'm not going to read every one of their comments because there was a couple of other things that I wanted to keep getting to because there was some good stuff out there. But Oliver Sutton and Chisholm C, Oliver Sutton definitely fighting the good fight. He says, we'll give a reply if you're so quick to answer the gimme one. Well, we're done with this, and there's even more replies. So, Underput says in response to the gravity and LIGO debunked video I put out a week or two ago, he's space-time, the time after smoking a bong. Carpe cannabis. Indeed. Dystopic Paradise says, excuse me, he says, what those refusing to think for themselves have are mainly bullying tactics and crass ad hominem, name-calling kindergarten mindsets when it involves trying to learn our true ecology and nature of our Earth. God forbid we disagree with the devil's and their pseudoscience minions. I really do feel that they're scrambling now, as they seem to be pushing the hurry-up button on things lately. Do you understand what I'm referring to? A shot in the dark indeed. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I probably should have mentioned this before, just sort of changing gears a second, I'll come back to this. I want to say that I super appreciate the super chats that you guys have been giving. I will say that the way that YouTube handles those is not exactly ideal. They take, I think it's 30% of any of the super chats, and I won't actually see those funds until like the next month. So it takes like a month for those funds to actually get to me, less 30%. If you want to help out immediately, because our situation is a bit cool, you guys, we are in a hotel, we're paying by the week, we've got medical expenses, the wolves are at our door, so to speak. Thanks to PayPal, Patreon, Venmo, all that stuff. It comes immediately. The fees are nominal, certainly not 30%. Of course, super chats are welcome and greatly appreciated, but Google just taxes the hell out of them, and it takes sometimes a month or even 2 months for me to actually see the funds. So just wanted to throw that there. Do appreciate the super chats, but PayPal, Venmo, Cash are much preferred. But hey, man, I'm not going to look a gift horse in them. God bless you and thank you for those. So anyway, back to Dystopic Paradise's comment. The true cosmology and nature of our Earth, what those refusing to think for themselves have are mainly bullying tactics. Right, and I think we kind of saw that with that exchange that we had just a minute ago, right? Bullying tactics, demanding answers, right? Like as if it's a responsibility to answer every single one of these guys' questions and within his stipulated time frame, right? Which is, I mean, just the gall. Right? Is it the gall of some people? And ad hominem, crass ad hominem. And that is this, it gets difficult, man, because like flat earth proponents, man, we're trying to help people. We're sticking our necks out on the line. And, granted, society looks at us as the most foolish, idiotic, stupid, bass-ackwards people that should probably just go jump off a bridge as far as they're concerned. But the messed up thing about it is we're actually right, okay? When you get text, we're right, okay? We know that we're right, and we're trying to help people. And in return, we get bullying, we get ad hominem, we get just ultimatums. It is so difficult. And I think that really what keeps me is the fact that we know that we're right, we're trying to help people, and I would say a lot of flat earth proponents are Christians and told by Christ to stand up for what we know to be right, even when people are just threatening you and just say all kinds of nasty things about you, to stand up for what you know to be right and be glad, rejoice, for the kingdom of heaven's at hand. And I got to tell you, man, the promises that are made by Christ and the Most High are always kept. I can't prove you, but I can attest to it that If you stand up for what you know to be right, in spite of the negative repercussions, you will be showered with blessings by the Most High, and it's the natural order of things, and that is one of the promises that was passed to us from the Master and is definitely kept. So couldn't agree more with Dystopic Paradise. All right. Peterson says, definitely a piece written by or alluding to Freemason connections. Besides the obvious references to important numbers within the story, and by the way, this is referring to Florida Magazine, The Iron Republic, which I highly recommend. Again, he says, written by or alluding to Freemason connections. Besides the obvious references to important numbers within the story, which should be an ultimate giveaway, there are parallels to long-told stories such as Icarus, as well as reference to Lucifer and other details that parallel Mason lore, myth, and just plain references. I would suggest that they were attempted to be removed after men decided that there were just too many truths to be let slip of within this story. Or perhaps the Masons have always been known to prefer this number or quote, that lore, and it was simply used by the author to let that little idea into the mind of the reader, somewhat like an Easter egg now. I believe that someone had traveled beyond our realm into the next long before the Antarctic Treaty, and the wholly untrue and unfounded polar and Arctic exposition stories were a way to make the world believe there was hardly any way of surviving, let alone really discovering anything within those regions. So again, so this is in regards to the Iron Republic, or it's a comment in response to the Iron Republic, a South Polar Adventure. I put the audiobook up on my channel. It's definitely interesting. So here's the thing. If you were a well-off, like rich white dude back in the 1800s, odds are you were going to be a Freemason. If you were a college-educated, rich white dude, which the author of this apparently was, like if he wasn't a Mason, it would have been strange. I'm certainly not like cheerleading for the Masons or anything. I mean, that just is how it was. It was just sort of the natural progress that dudes went through. If you went to college, if you had money and you were bright, then you were tapped to join fraternal organizations, which ultimately leads you into Freemasonry. And, you know, I'm not saying I'm for or against that. Now, you definitely get into some weird sects like the Skull and Bones guys who do all sorts of weird things with Geronimo's skulls. And, you know, I don't agree with secret societies at all. I mean, people who get together behind closed doors and make secret pacts to essentially give their group an advantage over everyone else, that's where we get things like the Federal Reserve. That's where we get things like the siphoning of all of our wealth into the hands of a few rich people. So I'm certainly not for Masons. But what I am saying is we can't necessarily hold it against these dudes from the 1800s who happen to be Freemasons. Like Dr. Samuel Rowbotham, who wrote Zetetic Astronomy, was a Mason, it appears. Honestly, if it wasn't for that dude, we wouldn't have a flat earth movement today. I promise you that. And he was a Freemason. So I don't think at that point it was so evil as it tends to be these days. Because, I mean, there's definitely nefarious crap going on behind the closed doors of the lodges of Freemasonry. But, I mean, I don't think it's all like that, right? I mean, you definitely have the sort of the Blue Lodge guys who are initiated, but they're not really in on the actual goals and long-term endeavors of the lodge. And they provide more of a cover, a legitimate cover or cushion, a buffer between society and the inner circle of Masons, that it gives them an air of legitimacy and innocence. And, you know, these guys can attest that the Masons are just a fraternal order that get together every once in a while to discuss cigars over scotch, right? And as far as they're concerned, that is what it is, right? But it's only when you apparently get into the inner circles, the upper echelons of Masonry, where you've got things like, well, for all we know, the seat of Satan, right? I mean, that's kind of the when you take it to its ultimate degree, when you get into the inner core of some of these Masonic lodges. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if some demon is sitting there, right? I mean, I'm not saying that's the case, but it wouldn't surprise me none if that was true. So anyway, just because there are potentially Freemasonic or numerological allusions in the Florida Magazine Iron Republic story, I would say it's still worth a read. This thing came out right around 1900. The guy did his journey in the 1890s or so, published his work in 1900. And I mean, just look at the changes in our society, if you can believe the history books, right, starting at 1900. I mean, look at everything that changed in the last 120 years. I mean, we got, okay, well, the diesel engine was in the late 1800s, but we got automobiles, we got airplanes, we got television sets, radios. I mean, you name it. Modern society as we know it has sort of sprouted up miraculously since about 1900. And frankly, it makes a lot of sense that we got a lot of this technology from something like the Iron Republic. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. Because remember, the Iron Republic was set up in such a way where people were actually free to do what they wanted. They weren't sort of put through a meat grinder of a system that we find ourselves in here, where the average person is more worried about how they're going to pay for basic needs like food and housing and how they're going to make ends meet. And so there is not really any time for focusing on art, music, inventing, like the more creative things that are not necessarily lucrative from a capitalistic standpoint, but they are spiritually lucrative, right? And so a place like the Iron Republic would be a fertile ground for sort of the inventive and pioneering spirit, whereas not so much when it comes to the capitalistic, federally reserved, indoctrinated system that we find ourselves in today. So now another tidbit that I think is interesting is that it does appear that we have two authors, in my opinion, of the Iron Republic. We have the guy that actually took the journey and brought back the technologies and the stories from the Iron Republic. And then at some point, we have another author that sort of commandeered the story and used certain literary devices that were promised by the author not to be used. So, and maybe that was for ratings or to sell more magazines, but I mean, I don't know. I think it's a great story. I think it's very interesting. If you haven't listened to it yet, I've got the entire complete audiobook on my channel. Again, it's Florida Magazine, Iron Republic. It was over several, it was like a installment series, like a serial series in the Florida Magazine over 5 or 6 issues. And I've got them all in one sort of contiguous video that's, it's a lot of fun, man. It's a really good listen, really good read, so I definitely recommend it. I mean, complain about it as you will, and I'm not going to attest that it's true or not. I don't know if it's 100% true. I like to think that it is, and it actually makes a lot of sense in terms of other corroborating evidence. So, like Admiral Richard Byrd, when he did the Operation High Jump, he flew his plane south of Little America over Antarctica and found a continent as big as the United States south of Little America. This actually ties into Cammie's magnetic map that she mentioned a few weeks ago, and it ties into the Iron Republic. So, I mean, this is all pointing towards more land that's being hidden from us. And, if that's true, then it makes a lot of sense why NASA would be faking space, because remember, we live in a sort of capitalist world where one of the most important thing to the capitalists is scarcity, right? I mean, if you live in a world of abundance, then you can't jack up the futures prices on things. But if you live in a confined, encapsulated world of scarcity, then it drives prices up, and that's good for business. It's good for the few sitting at the top of this thing. And if word were to get out, if the truth were to get out, if there actually is all this extra land with highly sophisticated society that is essentially our cousin civilization, that would be a problem for them. They would lose their mind control over us instantly. This perfectly explains things like the Antarctic Treaty. That's why they've got us fenced in. They want to keep us from knowing this truth. And so, if anything else, within our lifetimes, yeah, getting flat Earth out to the masses is very important. But ultimately, if it happens to be true that there is more land and other cousin civilizations out there, that's the ultimate thing we need to get out. I'd love to go see the Iron Republic if it's there. What's beyond that? I mean, we don't know, man. This realm could be huge. The Earth, as we know it, could just be one small drop in the bucket in terms of what else is out there. There could be similar geothermal pockets, other worlds on the plane, just peppered all over the damn place like Swiss cheese, and we're just one in hundreds. Okay, I mean, maybe that's not the case. Maybe this is it, but to confine or to constrict God's creative power to just one world, and this is it. We've got Sheol below us, the seven heavens above us, and our world, and that's it. I mean, maybe that's the case, but it's not up to us to dictate God's awesome creative power. God can create worlds on this plane all day long if he wants. There could be much more land out there on the dielectric plane, and we are very much in an infancy state when it comes to exploration. And I just feel it in my bones. I know it in my heart of hearts that there is much more out there than what we have been led to believe. I mean, if not, then what is the motivation for the deception, right? Why would they have to trick us that we live on a finite ball if we live in a finite enclosed system? There's no point to that. No, I think they're hiding the fact that we can get the hell out of here. There are other destinations. There are places that we can go pioneer and go murder the natives there. No, I'm kidding, but I mean, that is what we European cultures tend to do, isn't it? We find a land filled with indigenous people, natives, and then we go and make treaties with them, and then we break our promises and murder them and rape their women and make slaves out of their children. I mean, of course, that's a hideous, horrible thing for people to do. And who's to say, I mean, man, what if they're already doing that sort of thing out there? I mean, I wouldn't put crap past our government, but they're definitely hiding something, man. I mean, I think that goes without saying. They're definitely hiding something. All right, so Richard Hubbock says, P.S., was there any part in the video which explains this? Does this because of this? Please don't indicate a picture with numbers and lies on it. Okay, so that was in response to Flat Earth abandoning inertia. He says, I don't think so. All I heard was globe believers believe this because they are mistaken, or what happens in the flat earth model is this because to think anything to the contrary is absurd, all of which doesn't actually prove anything. They are just words. Well, dude, I think whatever you just said perfectly applies to your comment there because you didn't make any sort of cogent point. I mean, I can understand that you're being argumentative, but would you mind making a cogent point that I could potentially respond to? Wow. Okay, so let me check on the chat here, and I'm going to scroll up a bit. So Eric Reed says, the Bible tells us plain as day the devil eats us or devours us. Does it? That sounds pretty creepy. Yeah, the devil goes about like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. Yeah, you're right. That's true. That's what it says in the Bible. All right, so Arata Ratahala says, if I'm out in left field, where is Jesus? Because I'm following him. Yeah, I mean, to me, that's probably the most important thing that Jesus did was he stood up for the truth. He exposed the synagogue of Satan as a den of vipers, dead man's bones in whitewashed tombs, and ultimately paid for that with his life. Took back the authority and the keys to the underworld, to Sheol, and he was sacrificed, crucified on a cross, so that we may have a chance at everlasting life, just as he did after resurrecting. Right? I mean, that's the thing. Eric Reed said the devil fell with a large amount. If reptilian angels, they are hungry. So I don't know, man. I'm under the impression, and this is just my opinion, can't prove it, but I'm under the impression that the angels are more incorporeal. The fallen angels, maybe they have some means of possessing physical bodies. But I think that angels are more of a spiritual sort of being, but that's way out in left field, isn't it? Maybe a topic for another discussion or another day. Neff BT says, I didn't realize I'm a subscriber for a long time, and this is the first time that a notification from your channel popped out. Well, I'm glad you made it, man. Yeah, most of my subscribers never get notified when I do videos or live streams anymore, so I'm glad that that you did get a notification. That's awesome. All right. Aratsa Rasahala says, ignore my comments, please, Morgile. Okay, I'll ignore your comments then. Okay. Hobo Man says, I think the YouTube channel Vibes of Cosmos is onto something. He shows how the moon is a map of the earth, like a reflection. Pretty awesome channel. Yeah, my friends Richard and Priscilla, they had mentioned that maybe it was that channel, maybe a different one. And I've been looking into it. I want to do some content about that, but I just don't have a good enough grasp on the exact subject matter to speak on any authority on that. But it is interesting. I have heard about it in the past, and it is something that I am looking into. So bear with me on that. Maybe I'll do some content on that in the near future. Aratsa Ratsahala, you seem to get banned from channels. I don't think I've banned you. Anyway, Cannibal is priest of Cain, meaning Cain bull. Yeah. Definitely check out the Discerning of the Gospel series I've put out lately, where I'm sort of trying to apply the same spirit of discernment towards the contradictions in the Judeo-Christian Bible, because there's a lot of very interesting finds in there. So if you haven't seen that, check that out. It's a playlist. I've got about 5 or 6 videos on there. And I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and wrap this one up, you guys. But it's been a real pleasure hanging out with you and doing a live stream. As I mentioned before, the channel definitely could use your support. There's a handful of you guys out there that have been very helpful. My wife and I have sort of been teetering on the edge of homelessness for quite some time now. We have an apartment that was supposed to have been ready. We put a deposit down back in July, and it still isn't ready yet. They're having trouble like evicting that was supposed to move out weeks and weeks ago, I guess because of COVID or whatever. And so it's a very precarious situation. So, you know, by the grace of God, we have been able to survive. There's been a few instances where we had to sleep in the car, which is no fun, but just very briefly. And anyway, if you'd like to help out the channel, you know, we could sure use your support. Again, links to PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, Patreon, all that will be in the description box. Thanks so much for your super chats. I really do appreciate you guys for that. And don't forget to check me out on Globebusters Sundays and Wednesdays. I've got video content that I've recently uploaded, more to come, and just thanks so much for hanging out and watching, you guys. I always love doing these live streams and getting to talk with you, read through your comments, and kind of feedback with you in the chat. So I do hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. One love, you guys, and as always, spread the word, spread the world, and peace out, everybody. We'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.